All right, Blake.
That's
Tell us
fine.
your. No, that's not fine. Tell us your story, Blake.
Okay. First off, I'll just say that we've got storms rolling through here yesterday and today, and so my internet connection sometimes shows it's unstable. So hopefully that
Morning.
won't be an issue. Anyways, my name's Blaik Ogle. I'm 40 years old, and I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Knoxville Open Water Swimmers, known as the KOWS with a K, in Knoxville, Tennessee, and co-founder and co-director of the Bridges to Bluffs 10K open water swim. So part of my marathon story is telling the story of KOWS and with Bridges to Bluffs, with how it got started here in Knoxville because we were the first open water swimming group. And my co-director, Jack McAfee, and I were the first two to really start swimming in Knoxville and to make open water swimming a thing. So that's a little bit more interesting than hearing about, I grew up swimming or I didn't grow up swimming or, I did this race or did that. I'm not a very competitive person. I like sports, but it was never really, those group participation things or it's kind of like that Gen X, with organized events. So I was drawn to running, cycling, trail running, those types of things, and always swimming. And I was always drawn to the water. And back in 2015, I found myself the president-elect of a multi-sport club here in Knoxville, which kind of encompassed all of endurance sports. A friend had kind of roped me into it, and I took it because they controlled an open water swim group that happened way out west. Took forever to get out there, and it was in a hot location, and it wasn't I still don't think it's the best. It's a beautiful location, but I wanted to be more involved in with that and to kind of also bring in more inclusivity into the multi-sport scene. Locally, it's primarily triathlon dominant. And so this group kind of took all that in, and while we were starting it, we built it as a legit organization to where we were dealing with sponsorships and making it a 501c3. And then we had taken on insurance. And I found myself in a position where nobody else would take over the role. So I had to keep it for a second year. And part of the thing was, if I get to keep it for a second year, I'm going to use our insurance that we get to open up a swim that happens downtown in the river to kind of do more of an advanced swim for people. It seemed like every swim that we did was targeted just towards beginners, and it was just towards like that 1,000-yard mark or stuff. And we weren't swimming out in the main channel, and it's like, we've got all these awesome places to swim. Why aren't we there? And so I'd expressed my ideas, and back at this time, the downtown river scene in Knoxville, Tennessee was nothing. It was kind of considered cursed. And when people found out that what I was going to try to do, they kind of laughed at it. And it was always kind of looked at, nothing happens down there. There was a triathlon that had taken place, and the water would always be mid-50s, and they'd pull people out hypothermic, and it ended, and it had kind of a terrible relationship with the city. And so a friend of mine introduced me. She's like, you need to meet this guy named Jack. He just moved here from Chattanooga. And Jack and I we're really good friends, but we're kind of total opposites. And I think that's why it kind of worked and things took off here. He is extremely competitive. He's extremely accomplished. He's won Ironman Florida. He's won all these marathons. I've been over at his house before and going through medals, and it's like, what's this? And it's a world championship medal. He's like, oh, no big deal. So he brought to that aspect of things of having the experience, and he had helped Karen Nazer down in Chattanooga as one of the original cows that started the Chattanooga swim, and he'd done Swim the Suck every year. And I was kind of transitioning in my life, looking for something different to do, a little bit, trying to find, something more unique, more challenging. And I'd always been drawn to the open water into a more solo type, and so we had a meeting and we met and we discussed what our goals were. And we decided right then that we were going to form something and start it, but we didn't know where we were going to do it. All that we knew is we were going to meet Thursday, no matter what the weather was, what the conditions were, or how many people showed up, that we were just going to show up and we were going to do it. So, and we, that first year this was 5 years ago, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, we would show up and we'd try to find these different places to swim to fill it out. And one day we saw this porch that was down on the river. and it was next to the Tennessee owns that. So we started sleuthing around, and this guy that owned it was actually opening up a bar and a paddleboard shop and kayak rental place. And so we got in touch with him, and he didn't know us from anybody. And we was like, hey, we want to start swimming in the river, and, you know, we want to use your porch to base off of. And by the way, could we maybe rent some kayaks from you? And so he didn't know us, and he's like, yeah, we'll provide them for you. So for the last couple of years, we'd had that relationship to where anybody that wanted to pilot could come, and they would give them a free paddleboard or a free kayak, and kind of became the fun thing to do. And people started getting more drawn to the river at that. And we started seeing groups from like 3 to 4 of us, you know, was suddenly going up to like 10 people, you know. And one day we found this little exit that happened, or Jack had found this exit down a little further out of town that wound up about 5.8 miles from where we swam. And we thought it would be a good idea to bring the people up from Chattanooga that were training for some longer stuff, like Jenny Smith and Karen Nazer and Jamie Ann Phillips, who've all now done big swims, but at the time it was really only Kara that had done it. And they were all training for stuff. So we got a group of people, and we kind of laid out this whole event for what we were going to do. We were going to jump off, and everybody was going to have their pilot, and we were going to allow some of the people from Knoxville who were kind of new at going anything longer than an Ironman distance to trade off and do a relay, you know, and just have a long swim in some cooler water for the Chattanooga people. And so we did it on September 11th, and it wound up being a really great day. We were so excited when we were going there, like, this is going to happen. And it's like, no one's ever swam down this section of the river before, you know, what's going to happen? And so there was that. And we got done, and we talked to Kara about it later on, and she agreed that she thought that it was a great thing to do, so we should maybe think of doing a race. So, and that's how it was all born, and then it just kind of grew from there. I had my experience from helping organize with a multi-sport club, getting my contacts around town. Jack had his contacts of just being an elite athlete that people would want to be around to swim, and being with Kara and knowing how they started their organization in Chattanooga. So it kind of just grew naturally from that. And the next thing was decide how to get a distance. So we had the riverboat, and they never really liked us swimming beside it. Like they're a different crowd of people. They kind of remind me of, if you've ever crewed a channel, like the channel boat guys, they're kind of like that, but on the river. And so we started talking to them. We researched them, like how, and they were all like, if you go off our boat, it's a, you know, 3,000 or some enormous fine that they do. So he's like, we're going to get it. So we just worked and worked and worked. And so we invited this captain, this old guy, and we looked up everything about him, and invited him out to dinner. And we were all nervous sitting there, because he's like, this is make or break. If we do this, you know, if it works, then he has to agree to this. We've got to make him do it. And we sat down, and everything was just not working. Like, he was just giving us this stone-faced look, like, I'm not buying it. Like, he's like, you want to jump off and swim how far? And like, he's like, it's cold, people can die. And he's like, no. And then Jack had actually found this little triathlon that happened in Alabama that jumped off a riverboat, and he had a little picture of it. And that a guy happened to see it, and he looked down, and he goes, wait. And he goes, I trained that guy who drives that boat. And he's like, he does this? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, I mean, and from right then, like, once he knew that it was on, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, you want to jump off the front of the boat? And we was like, yeah, we actually do. And so he's like, all right, let's do it. And from that moment on, it was done. And so then we had to get people to actually come and swim, you know, and that was the next big challenge. We had done this, and I think I was trying to remember how we actually come across getting the national championship, but we had made the joke, I believe, like, we were coming into a lot of roadblocks with, like, when you city, you know, there's a lot of different permits you've got to go through, and you know, permissions that you've got to get. And we were hitting all this, and I think we'd seen the thing to host a national championship. We made the joke, like, if we got that, you know, I bet that could open up some doors. And then, like, we opened up a registration, and nobody's signing up, you know, and we're having all these problems getting all this. And then, like, Jack's like, we got the national championship. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I kind of filled it out as a joke, like, just to see, you know. And he's like, and we got it for the next year. So we'd already been labeled as hosting a national championship, and we hadn't held our first year. We hadn't had 15 people sign up. And so we hit probably every roadblock going through there. But I'll tell you, that whole process of that first year of doing it was great in retrospect because it opened up to a lot of people locally. They got onto it and they started eventually coming around to the idea of doing something longer than an Ironman, you know, doing something that's unique to the city. And so they started coming with that. And then seems like the week of the race, we had like 70 something people showed up. And so we considered that a success. We rolled out our national championship for years, and we had 1 year to plan for it. So we've hosted the race 4 years, 3 years officially. We went from kind of after that first year, things just went great from it. And it was really beyond anything that we were ever expecting. You know, we were like, more people were doing the 10K, and then people are flying in from out of states, you know, and they're coming in to do that. And then our city started taking note. One of our friends is a great photographer, and she did the photos that are behind that are our awards that we do. And so we kind of rolled out things, and we laid out the event to is like, what's the best things that we've ever experienced, and how do we want to do this? And we made it to where it wouldn't be about making profits for ourselves, but to grow the sport in the community. And then we'd kind of seen people kind of challenging us, like looking at us like, this isn't going to happen. Like, people don't swim this far. They're not going to travel there to do that. You know, all this, like, it felt like our backs were up against the wall, and we're both people that were stubborn enough to, when that happens, like, we're going to make it a success. And so we just put our heads together, and then this great team came about. We've got people that kind of took their own roles with it, and now, you know, everybody's kind of got their own little niche that they work with, and they have pride with it, and it kind of really gives you the motivation to keep doing it when you see people that come up to you and say things like, I'm training for your race. You know, a thing that started out as like an idea in your head, and then they're actually investing their time and their money, and they're traveling there for it. See those things happen. It's been fantastic to see it grow, and to see the mix of people that come in and through it. And our swims that we have on Thursday nights, we groomed just a great group now to pick them out and be like, that's our open water swimmer. You know, if they can jump in 56-degree water, and, you know, with a current, and there's bridges and traffic and everything downtown, and they do great. And you get to see some people that maybe wouldn't be the best in other sports, but they can do really well in this. And now they've got a race. And, you know, one of our original ideas was step up first double-digit swim, and folks are doing it. We've had, since we started, 12 people step up and go 10 miles. I don't know how many we've had that have stepped up and done the 10K, but they've become great cold water swimmers because it's cold primarily year-round. Some people are joining me and been swimming year-round with me, and it's fun to see that step up in those people, and it helps keep you motivated to keep doing it, because it really is like taking on a second full-time job that you don't make any money for. And people like to give you a lot of hard times about sometimes, and you think this is just for your own things. But when you see that, and then we've also got a partner that's become like a really close friend, and they're just as invested as you are with it, then you know, that those are stuff that keeps you going. So it's been an honor to do it for the community and to keep up for a little while, but we plan to be on the scene for a while, so we'd love to have all you guys come join us. So I guess that's it for telling my story, as far as what other questions that, you know, you have for the interview. So
yeah, tell me a little bit more about pushing distance, both like how you've pushed your own distance, as well as you can talk about community and how you can like encourage others to build distance.
Yeah, well, so I started pushing my distance in 2015, stepping up. I wanted to do Swim the Suck, and to step in and start going into some other things. And I didn't want to rush going into the bigger distances and the colder stuff. And kind of, I'd been around different scenes long enough to see how fads take on, like Ironman or ultra marathons or things, you know, and somebody sees it and thinks, well, I can do it, so I'm just going to jump in and sign up and, you know, and do one. And I think you miss a lot of things when you go about it that way. So I wanted to do it right. with it. And there was a group like Anita's on the call. She did swim the suck with me my first year. And so we would just set up and organize our training on the weekends and do point-to-point river swims as it started off, and and did it in groups, and we would take turns piloting for one another. And Jamie Ann Phillips, when she was training for stuff, we kind of partnered up, and I've crewed her for SCAR and for Catalina, and we've done a lot of training stuff together, and we would go back and forth. It's just kind of come after I did my first swim the suck, and I got to the end of it, and it was quite the miserable experience. I had some back issues going on, which I should have probably been looking at surgery, and that all came later on from it, but I was quite miserable. But I got to the end, and I had so much left in it, but I felt so miserable, and I thought, well, if I feel this bad, and I know that I'm in probably the worst shape of my life, and I just did this 10-mile swim, then really, where does it go from there? And then you start meeting people around the world, and been fortunate to travel and swim across the country and meet people that do these epic things, and they do it. The first part was tackling the cold, so I'm more proud of how we do that than we do distance. So we've kind of here, people followed me through there, and I just went off the likes of Colleen Blair and Sarah Thomas, and Elaine has been a big help with that when I was starting out and going year-round swimming and trying to get to an ice mile. So that's really, there's no magic for me. There's been no magic secret to it, and it's just swimming. So I don't really take it too seriously, but I do get invested into with it. I guess that's my approach to it. Just have fun with it and just build slowly. Don't take no for an answer.
Right.
Know that you can drink like a whole bottle of children's Advil in one setting. It's not going to hurt you.
Tell me about recruiting people for cold water swimming, because I have some trouble with that around here.
What's what?
Recruiting people for cold water swimming. Do you just being example, or how do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, it took a while before people were even trying to do it around. Most of them wear wetsuits here, and I don't discourage that. I had to, at one point I was in them too, so I was happy to leave it and to move on without it. And so I just try to encourage when people show up at our swims, and we've had them, Anita can attest to this, we've had them show up and be like, yeah, I'm a great swimmer. I've swam in these temperatures, and they jump in and they've never had their head above water, or they've really never done it, and they freak out. And so we've kind of learned sites to see around people that are dangerous, but I've also kind of picked up on cues for somebody that has the potential to do it. And they're usually the ones that will come in and just, they're kind of a little crazy and, not a little fearless and just not afraid to jump in and try. And they do it, and you just kind of go up and approach them and be like, hey, I do this, and there's other people wearing wetsuits, but you don't have to. And, you can keep swimming with us after the season ends. And we've got some great quarries, and it gets down to about 40.8. It's about the coldest that it gets. So, just try to encourage them to go along with it. And just that first time, what I've found that works best for a couple of them that have had successful goes at it, and they've went down into the mid 40s, is that just encourage them to get out and try to stay as long as they can until they want to get out, then let them get out, and just kind of ignore all that stuff. And just, for me, it took a year of this sucks, but I'm going to fake it and lie about it and say that it's great. And eventually it became great. So, just stick with it and lie to yourself. It's not that bad. It's just cold,
That's awesome. Can you tell me about a swim that you're proud of? One of your own swims.
I'm proud of them all. I'm proud of them all. I think my first swim the suck, I'm really proud of. I was having a lot of back issues with that there. I really shouldn't have done that swim, but I'd signed up for it and I wanted to do it. And at the time that summer, we had all the stress of doing Bridges to Bluffs 1, and my back kept going worse and worse, and I wasn't getting answers, and I didn't want to go down that road. And so finishing that, I was proud of that, because that was a big accomplishment, and I got to do it with my friends. The other swims that I'm proud of, I'm proud of my first solo cold water swim that I did by myself, getting in those 40-degree water, with people around. But I think the other ones, they're kind of, to other people, they may sound insignificant, but it's like having somebody else join when they do their first night swim and they love it. You know, that becomes a swim that I like. Or, you know,
Absolutely.
joining somebody when they do their first longest swim and they don't think that they could do it, and I got to swim along and be a part. So, you know,
Yeah.
I'm proud of them all, I guess, or else I wouldn't keep doing it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. You have any favorite swim memories you can share with us?
Yeah, going to cuss. No, I'm just joking. Um, yeah, I think one of my favorites is when Jack and I first started swimming, we would swim early in the mornings, you know, start and the sun would rise up as we're swimming down. And we weren't really, I wasn't at the time, we didn't really know a lot about how to track the currents or the temperatures or any of that stuff. We just go and do it. And it had really been storming hard, and the current was faster than probably I should have been in or wanted to been in at the time. And you know, but I wasn't going to say that. And it was my birthday of all things. And so we'd shown up, and he jumped in, and we got in and we couldn't see. And all of a sudden, like this tree had fell into the river, and it was like a massive, like real legit tree. And he was way downstream, and he usually would like do circles and like come back up and check on me, because I'm definitely slower than he is. And but he used to really piss me off, and so I didn't want him to do it. And so I swam into this tree, and I was in the branches, and I couldn't get out of it. And every time I'd try, it would kind of like float down the river with me. And I was like, well, great, this just sucks. You know, it's dark, and I'm freezing cold, and I'm in this tree. And I was like, they'll come back eventually. And they never, and him and another friend that's there, they never came back. And I got out of the tree, and I got caught up to them. And at that time, we're in this curve in the river, and all of a sudden, there's this massive barge coming up the river. And we've got to cross and just like sprint harder than we've ever sprinted before, or at least I did, to like try to get over to the other side. And like this barge just goes by, and it has this huge wake that comes up, and it knocks me into this trash pile that's on the other side. And it was, you know, one of those swims. And then getting back, and we're finishing it, and I'm going by the marina, and there's this guy at the marina that's like, don't swim by the marina, it's not grounded, you can get electrocuted. And so I was like, you know, this is great. You know, I've had this. That was one of my favorite memories. You know, it was an experience, you know, that most people probably think's crazy, but, you know, I have a feeling most people in this group probably get.
A birthday to remember, for sure. Tell me a little bit more about approaching unknown waters. This is kind of something I'm always intrigued by. When you don't know much about, well, yeah, even things like getting caught up in a current, and like, to me, that freaks me out. How do you overcome those kind of fears and just jump in?
I'm not lying when I say this, but I've never really had a moment in swimming where I've been panicked, or I've gotten scared, or I've had to like overcome something. I mean, swimming into the tree, I probably should have been a little bit, but it was more like, this is kind of funny that this is happening. So I would say that it's always just been like keeping a level head about yourself. Where we are, the currents don't really get that bad, because technically it's a lake that's controlled by dams. So if we get like really heavy rains, or when they're raising levels in the local recreation areas, it'll flow a little bit faster. But we don't get anything that happens like what the Hudson River gets, or, you know, tides get in the ocean. But folks do get a little panicked, because a lot of times when we were first starting out with KOWS, we would have these things like, who was the first to swim this part of the river, you know, and we would make it a little thing like that with 4 or 5 of us that would go around. And, you know, honestly, I don't know. I think you just, you kind of have to just play it safe on your own, and just trust your own instincts with it. You know, swimming is a solo sport that you get to do with other people. So being around other people that you can kind of trust, and somebody that's a little bit more experienced, even if it's in a newer place. I taught my 4-year-old nephew this past week. Like, we got in the lake, and it's like, all right, now look around and pick, you know, like 3 things that could be dangerous, and make sure you can see the bottom. I guess you have all that stuff, but I don't know. It's always like, for me, it's an adventure. It's like when I get to swim a new section of the river, or we've got these lakes that are up in the Smoky Mountains, and get to go and swim those. And so, you know, a few of them I know, I'm one of the first people that's ever been in this part of it, you know, that I know of, that's doing anything, you know, like legit, just recreational floating. And it's, you know, to me, it's fun. It's like getting that way. So I don't really think about those types of things. And Fortunately, we've never had an incident where somebody has needed help getting them out of that moment. You know, they get a little worked up, but they get around other people and they're fine.
Got it. Um, we're starting to dwindle down in time. I wanted to let other people have a question, ask questions if they wanted to, but can you tell me your advice for an aspiring marathon swimmer?
Yeah, get started. You know, there's really no secret formula to it. The formula that I found was to find people that did it better and do what they do. You know, there's a thousand different ways to swim. You know, with people's different strokes, find what works for you and just keep going. You know.
Yeah, that's good advice. Let's do it. Um, whose marathon swim story do you want to hear?
Yours. Honestly, no. Actually, I did think about this question. There's a lady in South Carolina named Melinda Menzer. She's a professor of English at Furman, and she I've met her through the race, and last year she did a refugee swim for a Jewish refugee organization. She drew attention by swimming across small publicity for it, but hearing her speak is very powerful. And she's just under Lisa Amaral out from in California. She's an excellent crew person. And I think having maybe that on, like the perspective from marathon swim stories from someone who's primarily a crew and has done some epic stuff. Then I'd also like to throw Elaine Howley for nominating me. I know they've got more stories that they could share and tell, you know. Really,
Yeah.
I would like to hear you.
Consider that. I'm trying to figure out how to do some redos with people because we had definitely early on, some of them are really short. I know like Molly Nance, her recording ended up being like 15 minutes. And I'm like, wait a second, there's more stories there. I'm trying to become a better interviewer too. So we'll figure out.
Great. I mean, Chris, I could listen to Chris and Mark Spratt tell stories all day long. So, you know.
I already went.
Anybody have questions for Blaik? Can I come off mute?
This is Chris again. I just wanted to say, and I'm not saying this just because Blaik's is here and we're friends, but having done Bridges to Bluff last year and a ton of other open water races, I can tell you that it is one of the best run and most fun races I've ever done. Just the way he and Jack put everything on, the attention to detail. You know, I think we've all been to races where we're like, ooh, that part was really poorly managed. There was nothing about this race that I could critique in a negative way, and it was just flawless. And I know how much work that they put into it, and it's you know, and of course there's always just chance. Any number of things can go wrong, and things do go wrong, of course, but we don't see it. So I just can't speak highly enough about it. It was so much fun. So if you get a chance to sign up and do it, definitely do. The energy is just great. So it's my plug. But it's very much genuine.
I will. Thanks. I will this that even though we've had the COVID that's going on, we're still open right now. I don't know how that status will change because the South's starting to climb in their COVID case numbers, so we're watching it. But we do love it, and this place is a great place to swim. And you know, after we started having success, one of our goals was to keep riding that success, to have this become, you know, kind of the equivalent of the Boston Marathon of swims, and not competing against other swims, but just that swim that people want to do. And this is a great area. It's cheap. We have the support of the local government and the sports commission, and we've got some ideas that are coming up. You know, marathon swimming is a very expensive sport, you know, and so it takes a lot of time to prepare and to save up for it. And this is an area where we can host and we can do things for marathon swimmers that doesn't break the bank. You know, it's like you can avoid the cost of San Francisco and New York and those, and still get a great experience. You know, we've got.
True. Yeah. Any other questions for Blaik?
Oh yeah. I would love to hear, you know, I'm going to be a swim the suck newbie this fall. And want to get your tips, anything you have to say that would, you know, be helpful to new swim the suck swimmers.
Well, congratulations. It's a great race. Kara, I jokingly call her the grandmother of open water swimming, because if it wasn't for Kara and what she did in Chattanooga, we wouldn't have been there. It's a great first marathon swim, or ultra marathon distance, whatever. Get that double-digit miles. It's just that, you know, first 5 miles are really fast, and you've got the current that assists there, and then it kind of dwindles down a little bit from there, but you still feel it throughout the whole way. And it's just there's an environment down there that's very laid back and relaxed, and the people that go to that event, while you look at their resumes, are very impressive. They're very laid back and very welcoming. So I think it's a great experience for a beginner who's stepping up to that distance. If you can go like a 10K, 8 mile, you've got that swim, you know, I think.
Well, I'm planning 8 miles in Philly, so I've got a 8-mile swim in late August as kind of training, and so I'm excited about this.
Yeah, well, best of luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, we're a little over time. Blaik, thank you so much for talking with us today. I love hearing your story.
Thanks for having me, Shannon.
Yeah, very much enjoyed this. Thank you.
All right, you guys, have a good day. We'll see you on Thursday.